Chapel and a couple others in South Business. I haven't seen them since we got back in March. So they decided that they'd like to get together in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
We had hoped to be meeting outside, but on the date that we were all going to get together, it was way too cold to be outside. So the only way that we could get together would be to be inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose not to do that, even though I would love to see them. Why? Because each one of those three friends has a whole circle of people that they're involved with, which immediately introduces an unknown. You don't know how many people their contacts have been in touch with and how careful they are or not careful they are. And when you're inside in a restaurant with people, even when you're not, it's less people in the restaurant, you're taking all those precautions. You're not eliminating the risk, you're reducing it. So you have to say to yourself, is seeing my friends and only being able to see them inside in a restaurant worth the risk that they might be carrying the COVID, not even knowing it, and I might take it home to Dad? No, it's not good. I choose that. I wouldn't make that same decision if I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
because you're not vulnerable. I mean, you talk about we have to get herd immunity and all. That's true, but let me tell you, herd immunity doesn't apply to people in their 70s and 80s and 90s. The aging process gradually limits your immune system.
But but the people in isolation also lowers the immunity as well. Not being around anyone that.
If you're totally isolated, that's right, and that's where you have to begin. And it's tough, Rach, to make decisions and saying, and people are different. For example, you get depressed and probably lowers your immune system because you're an extrovert when you're not around people. I can be not around people physically longer, and it wouldn't affect me the way it would affect you. So everyone's different too, and also I have all sorts of, and so do you, spiritual tools and resources which enable us, and also just knowledge of what's healthy eating and what's not, for example, which a lot of people don't have that knowledge or don't choose to use it. And so our immune systems are very complicated, and they're affected differently depending on your age and your temperament and what other resources and your diet and where you have to live. I mean, I just think my heart just goes out to all those people who have to live in slums and horrible neighborhoods and breeding.
You would think the homeless people would all be in the hospital with COVID because they're definitely not washing their hands or wearing masks.
Yeah, you're right. But a lot of them aren't.
Right.
I mean, certainly some of them are, but a lot of them are not. And there's the mystery of it, right? Somebody smokes like a chimney and lives to be 100.
Right, and your constitution
Why does that person get by with it and somebody else doesn't?
Your constitution and your attitude, but I mean, do you really think a car carries a virus? Like, I rented a car instead of being in your car. Like,
that would not be dangerous for you for renting a car. For one thing, the car companies, I looked into that. They are very careful about wiping it all down. And the other thing is, which you just said to me, is that it's airborne. You don't get COVID or the flu from touching a surface somebody else touched.
So why would that's why I would ask, why would I have to rent a car then? That's what doesn't make any sense. Like, I couldn't get into your car.
The only other alternative is that you are in a car with somebody else, namely us.
No, not if I drove your car by myself.
No, But how else are you going to get from the airport?
I would have taken an Uber.
Well, you could have done that, and that would have been fine.
But if I'm in your home with you, but I couldn't be in the car with you.
A car is a much, much, much smaller space. That's like being in our tiny little bathroom here for hours in the same space.
So you were saying it's airborne, but it's airborne from me speaking. It's in it could be in me, even though I would test if I trusted the test, which I've taken if I tested negative a million times.
You can't trust the test. That's the trouble. You could be carrying it, I could be carrying it, and then it would be negative because we don't have enough of the virus for it to show.
So why even take a test at all?
Again, not because it's perfect, but because you take the test because you might have enough of the virus for it to show, and that's a good thing to know that. You don't spread it to other people.
Yeah, I just see it differently. I just see it differently, and I don't know how long. Like when is it? Even if they said tomorrow, like if we don't really trust them anyway, why are we waiting to hear from them about what it is what we do next? If they tell us we have to take the vaccine, do we do that?
Okay, so once again, it's a matter of it's not black or white, either or. It's always both and. So I don't take the attitude that absolutely nothing that ever comes over from the government is wrong and I shouldn't listen to it. I should just be, neither should I believe everything they say. It's walking that space in between all or nothing. And that's always harder. It's a lot easier to just say, you can't trust anything they say, so I won't listen to them, because they're all bad. There's no good people in government. There's nobody with any intelligence. All of them are out to get you. Nobody cares about your good. And of course, that's a ridiculous point of view. But so is the other side, which says, oh yeah, you can believe anything they say. You just tell me and I'll just do it. It would be nice if life were nice and simple that way, but it's not, because people are mixed bags. And the government's a mixed bag. There's good and bad. There's a mixture.
So when does the faith come in?
What we hear from people is that's why we're so divided, because people are getting into so much either or thinking, like it's all fake or it's all believable. When the way I see it, the truth is it's usually a mixture. There's some truth to it, and there's some not truth to it. And you have to take the responsibility for figuring that out. And so you have to use your head, and you have to be reasonable, and you have to do the best you can. And sometimes you will be right, and sometimes you won't be right. And that's the same is true of every other person you know. Sometimes they'll be right, and sometimes they'll be wrong. That's life. So you have to figure it out.
But Mom, you really think the virus knows between 6 feet and 7 feet, or 8 feet and 4 feet? Like, you really think it knows exactly how?
No, I don't. And that's why you have to be approximate. I mean, 6 feet isn't you're going to get out the ruler. It's an approximate. More is better, actually. 8 feet is better than 6 feet, and so forth, just because of distance that they're discovering, just like it is with bad colds or flu, that it's airborne, And so if you're going to be with a person, now what if you're only going to be with them outside? Or what if you're only going to be with them for 10 minutes? That's a whole different thing than if you're going to be with them in a small space for 2 hours, like Daniela was with her friend.
Mm-hmm.
If she had been walking with her friend down Oak Park Street for those 2 hours, she probably wouldn't have gotten it.
And right, but she might possibly have a false positive. What was her symptoms? What did she have symptoms of? She was tired, and one day her heart.
She was fatigued, and and for a couple days she had a little arrhythmia.
I don't blame. If you're freaking out, your heart's gonna, probably not been.
But if you're,
that's not been a symptom that we've heard of anybody having their heart race in the list of CDC symptoms. Not one person, although there's been a lot of different ones.
That's not true.
Well,
That's not true.
you just look up on the CDC website.
At least not the sources I know.
All you have to do is look up on the. I know.
Don't think that John and Michelle were on that immediately.
Of course, Mom.
Whether that was a symptom or not.
I'm just saying.
It is a symptom.
I'm just saying on the CDC website, it is not listed as a symptom.
Yeah, well, CDC website is only one of many sources to check out. And probably one of the less reliable because it's been contaminated by politics.
Right, but you also realize it could say you have it when you don't. You know that a false positive means it says I have it when I don't have it.
You could. Yes, you could. That's exactly right.
So because this virus isn't going away, it's not going away, like the flu never went away. This virus is not going away. So how long?
Go away.
Until there's a vaccine, that's what they want to say. How long do we do this?
What the latest is that it seems now, and of course they keep discovering stuff and they keep doing studies, but it seems like as time goes on, there's more. It's more infectious, but it's less serious. So then it is heading, if it keeps going in that direction, it's heading in the direction of the flu.
Right.
Where it comes back in the winter and, or there's flu season. We all know there's Dad and I got flu shots. We haven't done that before,
You got flu shots. You got flu shots this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And shingles. I mean, poor Uncle Andy Reach has been, and my mother had it. It's horrible. So, but shingles is a whole different thing. That's not a infectious thing. That's that's related to chicken pox and all that stuff, herpes and stuff like that. But that's because when you get older, your immune system isn't as strong, and so if you can avoid having to go through an extremely painful and long bout with shingles, well, then you do that. Just like you kids, when you were little, we made sure that you got your rubella, against measles.
Yeah, Mom, there used to be 7 vaccines, and now before a kid reaches 3, they have to have like 20 different vaccinations. It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, well,
and the stuff that's in these vaccines are absolutely...
That's not true, Rachel. When you cite those things, that may be true at one certain point in time for one certain group of people in one certain locality. Those are not things that are true of everybody, everywhere, always. You have to get out of that.
Mom, just Google how many vaccines Mom, Google how many vaccines a child needs, how many immunizations a child needs before the age of 8. You just Google that.
I looked into that, and that's not true here in Grand Rapids and this area. It's not so. That's my point I'm trying to make.
So in Grand Rapids, Michigan, kids don't need to be vaccinated. Like they don't need.
All of Michigan. Keep your brains going here. You don't jump to conclusions beyond the facts.
Do you want to talk to a couple of my friends that have kids, and I can tell you how many that for them to go to school, how many they need right now?
You want to talk to people around here and ask them the same
I do.
question,
I do.
Very different answer.
I absolutely do.
You have a non-ticket. Okay. Call up Julie or Laura or Jan and ask them if it's true that 3-year-olds, or call up Teresa. Uncle Andy's daughter. She has little kids. Ask her if that's true.
Mm-hmm. How many in order to go to school? How many they need now? How many vaccines will your baby get?
Yeah, ask her. And she herself is a nurse. She went back to school and got her nursing degree. So she's in the health field. She would have the accurate information on that.
And if she told you it was more than 15, what would you think?
Then I would want to know why, and I would be, to me, not because I'm not in the health field, I would say, why in the world? Explain it to me. How can this be? How can this be? Tell me. I don't know. I'm not a health person. I don't understand. So I would just try to understand. I would ask for all the information I could get about it from the person, the young mother, and also a nurse.
Mom, the vaccine industry has changed since I was young and since you were young. I can show you what the CDC says you're supposed to have by the age of 8 years old. This is an industry that has made so much money, just like pharmaceutical companies have made so much money off of, instead of our own body building the immunity, they're pumping mercury and all this other shit into our bodies in these vaccines. Just look at the pamphlet of any vaccine and see what you're putting in your body. And they're making millions and millions and millions of dollars off of that. Instead of researching cancer, they want to stick us with chemo.
Okay, that's one point of view, and it's only part of the truth. It's only part of the truth. The other part of the truth is that there are many, many vaccines which have saved thousands and millions of lives of children around the world, and still do, and that there are people working in the health field, which includes vaccines, who are good-hearted and who are doing the right thing and who are following the science. And so what I'm saying is, what you have to say has some truth to it. And it is only a little piece of the truth. It is not the whole truth. The whole truth includes all the good people, all the smart people, all the science, and all the children. And I mean, I'm alive because of science, and because of vaccines, and because of modern medicine, including pharmaceutical companies. You have to look at the good that's being done as well as the bad.
I understand, and if they were studying, right, and if they spent as much money focusing on getting a vaccine, which, by the way, takes years and years to get the right vaccine for a certain thing, like polio or like hepatitis or whatever, that takes years and years, not 8 months, not 9 months. They haven't isolated the virus enough to get a vaccine that actually works for it.
You're absolutely right. And I agree about
years.
That. The science agrees with that. The science agrees with that.
Then why are they promising one so soon when we know it takes years? They're going to say a medical breakthrough happened, Mom.
Because we have a Trump administration right now. That's why. And
you don't think Biden would want people to be forced to take a vaccine?
No, I don't think that he would push it if the science wasn't behind it.
But Mom, do you know so many? You say the science, but they own a lot of the science. Like, they can make the narrative say that they found a medical breakthrough and it is safe. They can tell you that on the news, and then that will make people take it. They'll just say, well, it's really weird, but
They can also tell you on the news, which they are saying, that it takes just exactly what you said. It takes at least 2 or 3 years. The scientists who aren't being paid by Trump and who aren't afraid of him.
By Trump, okay.
Who stick with the truth. Those people are saying precisely what you're saying. They're saying, no, it has to pass certain tests. It has to be rigorously tested. It's going to take at least a couple years before something that's truly reliable and doesn't have bad side effects is available. They're all saying that. And the only people who are denying that are the Republicans and Trump right now. Mom,
Trump said it wasn't going to be mandatory. He actually said it wasn't going to be mandatory.
We're not talking mandatory. We're just talking that there'll even be one. Oh, yeah, he says, we're going to have one before the election. It's going to be coming out any day. Well, the only kind of vaccine that would be coming out anytime soon would be one that wouldn't be. Nobody would trust it.
And yet, yes, and I agree.
That 60% of Americans wouldn't have one, and we're among them. And
yet Bill Gates, who's funding all of this, who's funding this vaccine, who's funding all of it, wants to push it as much as he can.
Don't believe everything you read about Bill Gates.
I'm not, this is what he said. I'm not believing what
he's.
I'm watching interviews with him. I'm not listening to what anyone says. He's saying it. He's saying it. He's saying
I know it, but it's what people are interpreting that.
when he says out loud that when he says out loud that we will not be able to travel unless we have a vaccine, and that came from his mouth in an interview more than once, that's when I say bullshit. I'm not listening to that. I'm not listening to him because he said we can't travel unless we take a vaccine.
That's just an opinion. He can't enforce that. That's just an opinion. And you know, without making him a villain, you realize he too, like all of us, is a mixture of good and bad, wrong and right.
Mm-hmm.
Not all bad and not all good, not all wrong and not all right. That's the kind of thinking that keeps us divided. It's when we don't see that a point of view very different than ours might contain some truth. And
well, I know, but then why are you saying that Trump is a villain? Maybe Trump has good too.
He does, and I would be the first to admit that. But on this particular thing, where as far as I know, and I only know, and you only know what we read or hear or see, because it isn't like we personally follow him around so we check it out ourselves. We're depending on what we hear from other people. We're making decisions all the time on, okay, I believe that, but I don't believe that, or I doubt that, or I'm up in the air yet about that, blah, 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 blah. But I can only go from what I read and see and hear, and that is that the scientists themselves, hundreds of them, have signed letters saying that he has been trying to interfere with the scientific community and not allow them to conduct the kind of trials that they have found out over years and years and years of practice you need in order to have a safe vaccine or a safe medicine or anything. He doesn't care about any of that, and he says he doesn't care. I mean, you know, that's just obvious. He might have some other good point. For example, I agree with him that we should not be the policemen of the world, and that we have gotten involved in wars and politics overseas that we had no business getting involved with. And it's turned out very badly, both for us and for them.
Yes.
So this is just an illustration of how we just all are muddling around, Rachel. We just have to do our best to figure out what seems to us to be more reasonable and act accordingly. And it's based on what our sources of information are and how much we trust them and why we trust them or don't trust them. And the truth is that if we were trying to check out 99% of what we believe, secondhand information. It's not firsthand.
Well, that's why I told you. I have friends. That's why I sat and talked till 1 a.m. with two people from Romania. They're giving me their experience of something I wouldn't know about from the news about Romania. Or my friend that lives in Jerusalem right now, he can put up his phone and show me out his front window. That's pretty accurate of what getting news firsthand. And that's, I listen to people who live all over the world. In Australia, I listen to people who live there. And that's who I talk to. I don't, for 1 second, the only reason the Amish does not have COVID at all is because they don't have TVs.
Well, maybe. I just say maybe, Rachel, because, you know, they may be friends or people that you listen to, but you don't know how accurate they are. You have to make a decision about that. Well,
of course you make a decision about what you believe in anything, but if someone's holding a phone and telling you what their experience is, and it's not from a reporter and it's not from an organization that's funded by you know who, this corporation or that corporation, then you go, okay, this is probably the most accurate I'm going to get without being there myself.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you what it's like to fly, or like, you know, you can fly and go, oh, that's what it's like. Because everything else is just, you know, hearsay. And no, I don't think we should trust the government, but I also think we should trust our intuition. And that's when the spirituality comes in, about trusting God and saying, okay, how am I going to wait for the CDC to say it's okay to not be 6 feet away from each other? Am I going to wait till it comes from the government? Or am I going to wait to come from the practical knowledge of all the people around in all of Sedona, Arizona? There's been one death of COVID. And so, you know, that's when I start going, okay, well, at some point, I have to make some practical assessment on what I see and what I experience and how many people have died and what the real threat is.
Yeah.
And the same is with you. Instead of looking at cases, because we both know those cases are false positive, many of them are, and many of it is padded for whatever reason. I think we need to look at hospitalizations and deaths, not cases, because they're going to push that number up as much as they can to push the fear up.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right that the real danger, insofar as it can even be detected in a
PCA test,
way, that the hospitalization and death rate is your best source of assessing it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is very, very difficult to find, and they're making it even harder. There's things are now funded and run by the World Health Organization. It's a lot of money. Bill Gates just basically bought NPR. The news source I used to listen to, I can now hear has tainted the information towards the agenda of the people who are behind buying the news source. So now it's like, okay, the place I used to go where I thought it was pretty, you know, not biased. I don't want to hear anyone's opinion on the news. I want you to give me the information and let me decide for myself. That's why if you watch Fox, it's slanted. If you watch CNN, it's slanted. I don't want to hear a newscaster say, this guy's a jerk. I don't want to hear that, because let me decide. Give me the information.
I agree.
And when it's
ain't it awful?
Right. And when it's so slanted, I go, okay, who's funding that? I'm gonna go for the underdog. If everybody's saying something and giving me their opinion, and I know where the money goes because I always follow the money, and I go, okay, well, you're paid to say that. I was paid to say certain things on TV. It doesn't change that much. I just wish there was a news organization. I like the one that you go to, like the good news organization. You can even YouTube, if you go on YouTube and I type in inspiration, humor, spirituality. There used to be a ton of videos that came up. And now I am searching to find one. And now YouTube has more mainstream news stories that automatically play without me even touching it. It's just slowly, and they're taking down anybody that questions the narrative of the World Health Organization or anything. That your channel's gone, it's down. And that to me is going to get scary, because that's like 2 steps away from communism. It's 2 steps away from, you know, lack of freedom of speech, or even not even freedom of speech or questioning, just positive news. I go on YouTube, I try to find positive news. Nothing comes up. And I know it's not because there is nothing. I know it's because that will not feed, you know, this realm of fear that they're trying to push.
Just a minute. I get the New York Times on mine every day, and I read it. And every single day there is a section in which they tell optimistic, positive stories every single day. So
in the news, yes, yes.
And then I get the Christian Science Monitor. They always have positive stories.
Oh yeah, no, I mean NPR does. I mean, most newscasts will end with like
Yes Magazine. You know, I sent all the kids a Christmas gift of Yes Magazine. It's all positive. It's all the good stuff that people are doing and that's going on out there.
Well, that's what needs to be out there, but it used to be out there, and they're making it very difficult to find those things now.
It's not difficult to find it. I just told you how easy.
No, I'm saying in what mainstream people do when they go on their computer, right? When they go on their computer and they look stuff up. Like when you go on Google and look things up, when you go on YouTube, they're making the algorithm is very difficult to find things that you used to be able to find that were positive and fun and inspirational.
Yeah. Well, you speak much more from your experience. You know, I don't do much YouTubing or Googling or anything. I just have sources that I trust as much as I trust anything. And on those sources, I find a mixture of what seems like dependable news and some optimistic, and I'm afraid still too much not. But that's because so much seems to be going on. But then I keep remembering, you know, that the whole media enterprise, every bit of it is every bit of it, including the people who say, oh, you know, Bill Gates just bought NPR and now you can't trust anything NPR says and all that. All of it is distorted, and it's only just a little bit of the truth mixed in with a whole lot of other stuff. I think we're way too saturated with the media, actually.
Yeah, and the thing is once they take things down, once they take, you know, positive channels down, or channels where people are getting real news, not media-based news, they'll take your channel down if it is not in the alignment with what they want to say. And that's just as bad as burning books. It's taking away information from us, and we're being fed information on a narrative that is funded by corporations and pharmacies and whatnot. And that's when we have to go inside and take our own inventory and say, I'm purposely going to try to feed my soul this today, because if you don't make that intention, it's like coming at you left, right, and center, the other news. And so it's like somebody like having to go to the gym to work out, but that's not fun, and it takes time, and but it has to be that intention, because right now, if you just allow yourself to just watch or be,
you're absolutely right. You have to create a very strong intention, and you have to focus on what feeds your soul and where your intuition is and so forth.
And that's harder to find, but people are coming to it, and we come to it with disconnecting from all that stuff and spending time in nature, and also spending time around something that's positive, playing a game once a week, doing something that makes us laugh once a week, or connecting somehow, and then deciding inside of when we're going to say enough is enough, and are we going to let the media tell us when we can see each other without masks again?
Yeah.
If there's no agenda of all, start asking, not looking at the news, but start calling hospitals. How many people are actually dying of this right now? I need to know the deaths and the hospitalizations, and don't give me numbers of people above 80, please. Give me numbers, but calling the hospitals, just like you told me, your news source is like, okay, you're reading the New York Times or you're watching something from out there, but call the hospital. How about that? That's probably the best way. Call the biggest hospital in Grand Rapids. I'm just curious, how many people came in, how many people are hospitalized because of COVID that are with under 70, let's say. And I'd be curious to see what that is, because I bet those numbers just might be a little different than the ones that they're putting out to the world. And that's why
maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, I think I will too. That just to see, because there's a reason there are millions of people standing up for this, Mom. It's not just conspiracy theorists. There's people know something's not right. They feel it in their gut. And there's lawsuits that are being filed for crimes against humanity for this kind of stuff, because of all the people that are dying because of the lockdowns.
Yep.
So
that's the other side of it.
Yep. And I hope to have a channel that involves putting other people on there so they can give their opinion from their own place where they live all over the world. And I don't agree with some of it I do, but at least I'm presenting a fuller picture than a corporate funded narrative of mainstream media. And always end with people laughing and lightening things up, because that's one thing that if we raise our vibration, this virus won't be able to touch us if we raise our vibration high enough. I do believe that.
That's a good point.
So.
Okay, sweetie.
I'll talk to you soon. I'm glad we connected. Give Dad a hug for me.